Alrighty, so the last stage of our angiosperm reproduction is what we're going to hit today. We left off the last time where we had an embryo sac that had 6 small cells and 1 big cell with 2 nuclei, and we had 4 pollen grains per cell. I mean, there's lots more pollen grains than that, but they would each are going to have either 1 or 2 sperm each plus a tube nucleus. Now, you should already have read in your book about pollination. That pollination process can happen with the help of wind or birds or insects to transfer the pollen from one flower to another. And so when that happens, once the pollen grain lands on top of the female part of the flower, the tube nucleus that's in here is going to start burrowing down into the female organ of the flower. It's going to start reproducing. It's going to make a tube so that the sperm can then swim down to where the egg is. Now, this if it's got 2 sperm, that's great because it's going to have 2 sperm. If it's a particular kind of plant where only 1 sperm has formed, then that 1 sperm is going to divide and make 2 sperm as it is on the way down. Now, why is that important? Well, in plants, we have to have not just a regular fertilization where the sperm and the egg are going to combine to make a zygote, but in a plant that's going to make a seed, we have to provide for the ability of that plant to nourish the zygote, the embryo, as it grows until it's ready to grow and make do photosynthesis on its own to make its own food. So what we have to do is a process called double fertilization. So one of these small cells is going to combine with one of the sperm, and that's going to make the zygote. That's what's going to make the new plant. The other sperm is going to combine with this cell that has 2 nuclei in it. Remember, we had one big cell that had 2 nuclei. And so when I have this double nucleated cell, that's going to combine with the sperm, and that's going to make an endosperm. And as you should have already read, the endosperm is going to either provide or facilitate the nourishment of the embryo until it has germinated to the point where it can then do photosynthesis and produce its own food. Okay, so double fertilization, you've got 2 sperm, 1 fertilizing the small cell, 1 fertilizing a large cell to create both a zygote and the endosperm, which are going to be inside of the seed coat. Then when conditions are right and you have that seed germinating, then you're going to produce a seedling, which is then going to grow into your sporophyte generation, which again, just like the gymnosperms that we talked about, that is the main generation for both your gymnosperms and your angiosperms. And the gametophyte generation is not a separate plant like it was in the bryophytes. It's not a separate structure like it was even in the pteridophytes, but this is, the gametophyte generation is protected within that sporophyte generation. And so I know, in fact, even the last biology book I taught out of, they didn't really even want to say there was alternation of generations that happened with the angiosperms and the gymnosperms, but in reality it does. It's just that gametophyte generation is more confined within the sporophyte generation. It's still there, but it's just more confined and it's not as readily visible. Okay, so hopefully now, since we have drawn these diagrams, tried to be consistent with each one of them, it will be a little easier for you to see how all of the different plant types are similar, as well as how they are different from one another. A couple of key things to remember here again. Your dominant generation is the sporophyte generation in everything except the bryophytes. And so I don't have that blue branching diagram up there anymore, but again, it's on the last page of your lesson plan. So if you look at that, make sure that you understand the differences between those 4 classifications, the main terms that go with each one of them. If you've not already utilized them, the coloring sheets that I sent, well, I'm not requiring that you utilize them this time, They will kind of help you walk through the process for each one of these types of plants again. I also sent you the page that kind of goes before that explains each one of the procedures. Again, it's just a different way to look at things. So if those are helpful to you, please feel free to utilize them. They're not required, but if they are useful to you in understanding the material, I hope that you will utilize those.